Good evening. Steve Santarsiero, Lower Makefield Township. It's a lot of things I'd rather be doing tonight. And I want to start by acknowledging, and I hope you received the letter that I sent to each of you on the board. You should have received that yesterday. But I want to start by acknowledging the principle of this board and what it did, and Linda, when you were on it just a couple of years ago, and John, your leadership, and Phil, and Dennis, when you, righted a wrong here in Newtown that we've been unable to right throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we've been unable to right throughout the United States. And that is, you passed the ordinance, the Civil Rights Ordinance, which guarantees civil rights to our LGBTQ plus community. Because right now, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and many parts of the United States, it is perfectly legal to discriminate against members of that community in a variety of contexts, ranging from employment to housing. But you stood up with a clear voice and said, not in Newtown Township. And I applaud you for that. Because not every town in Bucks County, not every town in the 10th State Senate District that I represent has done that. So I'm deeply grateful for the fact that you took that step. Now, I'm not going to go through all the facts of what happened and how we got to this point with this resolution. I stated that in the letter. The purpose of the resolution at the end of the day was to recognize what a lot of the youth who are here tonight were doing, which was to have their first queer prom, the first one of its kind, and how much that meant for those kids. And believe me, when my colleagues in the state Senate refused to bring that resolution, essentially the same resolution, up for a vote on the floor of the state Senate, it was personally upsetting to me. And I was very grateful when every member of the Democratic caucus stood with me when I spoke on the floor of the Senate that day about how important that statement for the support of these kids really was. Now, I wasn't at this last meeting, but I understand that some of the concerns that were raised boiled down to this idea that somehow, by passing the resolution, it would be exclusionary. We would not be including all the other groups and people who have various issues and feel marginalized in our society. And as I said in the letter to you, the flaw in that argument is, implicit in that argument is this notion that by singling out one specific group, in this case LGBTQ plus youth, we are somehow denigrating other groups. And nothing could be further from the truth. As was just so eloquently said, we have days, we have months, we have weeks that we acknowledge certain issues and certain groups in our society, and it's right to do so. Because at those times we want to focus on whatever issue is at hand. And in this case, that's all we're asking. We're asking that this board, as your colleagues in Newtown Borough did, acknowledge that that one day, that one special day for these kids was Love is Love Day. Governor Wolf stood up and acknowledged that. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman did. And so many of us in the Senate and in the State House as well did the same thing. It's a statement that you stand with these young people, these courageous young people who are here tonight. And indeed, you need to hear their voices more than you need to hear mine, so I'm going to yield the floor in just a moment. But courageous, not just that they're here to talk to you tonight, and that's a tough thing to do at that age. I don't know that I could have pulled it off, frankly. But courageous that in a society that's not always so accepting, that they have found it within themselves to say who they are, and moreover, to be proud of who they are, and to take their rightful place in our society as Americans with the rights and privileges that we all enjoy under the United States Constitution. This is a statement, I get it. And I think it's really easy for cynical people to say, well, what are you making such a big deal about a resolution that's non-binding? And listen, we've got coronavirus going on, and we've got the economy going into the tank, we've got all these other issues. Why are you taking the time to talk about this? And I would say this. While all those other things are very important, and you and I and the legislature and the federal government will all be dealing with those issues in the days and weeks and months ahead, the core of who we are as Americans is about our ability to understand that we are all equal. And we are all indeed endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And that goes for everybody in this room. And yeah, it's always important to pause and to recognize that. And it's always important to let our voices be heard on that. And it's always important as elected officials that we stand up and be counted. And that when the vote is taken and recorded, that our names are recorded on the right side of history in that regard. So as I said, I'm going to yield the floor, but before I leave, I want to ask you, I want to urge you, please, reconsider your vote. Reconsider that motion, bring the resolution back up. You can do it tonight. It's a simple vote. And vote it, and show these kids that you respect what they've done and that you stand with them.